All right, great to have a big group here. I'm going to share my screen. And here we are on chapter 19, Sin versus Error. It is essential that error be not confused with sin. And it is this distinction that makes salvation possible. For error can be corrected and the wrong made right. But sin, were it possible, would be irreversible. The belief in sin is necessarily based on the firm conviction that minds, not bodies, can attack. And thus the mind is guilty and will forever so remain unless a mind, not part of it, can give it absolution. Sin calls for punishment as error for correction. And the belief that punishment is correction is clearly insane. Sin is not an error, for sin entails an arrogance, which the idea of error lacks. To sin would be to violate reality and to succeed. Sin is the proclamation that attack is real and guilt is justified. It assumes the Son of God is guilty and has thus succeeded in losing his innocence and making himself what God created not. Thus is creation seen as not eternal, and the will of God open to opposition and defeat. Sin is the grand illusion underlying all the ego's grandiosity, for by it, God himself is changed and rendered incomplete. The Son of God can be mistaken. He can deceive himself. He can even turn the power of his mind against himself, but he cannot sin. There's nothing he can do that would really change his reality in any way, nor make him really guilty. That is what sin would do, for such is its purpose. Yet for all the wild insanity inherent in the whole idea of sin, it is impossible. For the wages of sin is death. And how can the immortal die? A major tenet in the ego's insane religion is that sin is not error, but truth. And it is innocence that would deceive. Purity is seen as arrogance, and the acceptance of the self as sinful is perceived as holiness. And it is this doctrine that replaces the reality of the Son of God as his Father created him and willed that he be forever. Is this humility, or is it rather an attempt to wrest creation away from truth and keep it separate? Any attempt to reinterpret sin as error is always indefensible to the ego. The idea of sin is wholly sacrosanct to its thought system and quite unapproachable, except with reverence and awe. It is the most holy concept in the ego system, lovely and powerful, wholly true, and necessarily protected with every defense at its disposal. For here lies its best defense, which all the others serve. Here is its armor, its protection, and the fundamental purpose of the special relationship in its interpretation. It can indeed be said, the ego made its world on sin. Only in such a world could everything be upside down. This is the strange illusion that makes the clouds of guilt seem heavy and impenetrable. The solidness that this world's foundation seems to have is found in this. For sin has changed creation from an idea of God to an ideal the ego wants, a world it rules, made up of bodies, mindless and capable of complete corruption and decay. If this is a mistake, it can be undone easily by truth. Any mistake can be corrected if truth be left to judge it. But if the mistake is given the status of truth, to what can it be brought? The holiness of sin is kept in place by just this strange device. As truth, it is inviolate, and everything is brought to it for judgment. As a mistake, it must be brought to truth. It is impossible to have faith in sin, for sin is faithlessness. Yet it is possible to have faith that a mistake can be corrected. There is no stone in all the ego's embattled citadel that is more heavily defended than the idea that sin is real, the natural expression of what the Son of God has made himself to be and what he is. To the ego, this is no mistake, for this is its reality. This is the truth from which escape will always be impossible. This is his past, his present, and his future, for he has somehow managed to corrupt his father and change his mind completely. Mourn, then, the death of God, whom sin has killed. And this would be the ego's wish, which in its madness, it believes it has accomplished. Would you not rather that all this be nothing more than a mistake, entirely correctable, and so easily escaped that its whole correction is like walking through a mist into the sun? For that is all it is. Perhaps you would be tempted to agree with the ego that it is far better to be sinful than mistaken. Yet think you carefully before you allow yourself to make this choice. Approach it not lightly, for it is the choice of hell or heaven. So interesting, right? So I was never really indoctrinated in any way into any type of religion, although I understand sin from what I've heard other people speak of it from other religions, but having not really been involved in religions, it was never really something ingrained in my belief system, like perhaps it has been in other people's belief systems. I do like the fact that the definition of sin is missing the mark, right? So to sin was an old archery term, and it meant miss the mark or merely a mistake. Anybody have any thoughts about sin? Sin versus mistakes, sin versus error.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess okay, thanks. I was thinking of, so I didn't grow up with heavy guilt. I think we just studied the King James version of the Bible, and there wasn't much mention of the Old Testament or sin or hell or the devil. So I felt really lucky. But so this wasn't hard, or maybe as hard as it would have been. I don't know. Anyway, when I think of sin, I just think of it's my ego, it's my wrong-headed thinking. And when I notice it, what I try to do is just step back and from identifying with it and not judge it, like witness it without judgment, and know that it's not me. And then the sin, whatever it was, whatever in my head that was going on, that I thought things just weren't right and should be different somehow, whatever it was, then it disappears. I couldn't even tell you what I just used that little formula of stepping back on, because it just that lately, this has been my experience, it just goes away. And I can't recall what it was. So that's just a fun thing I've been doing lately that's working. I figure it's probably not the end all be all for my awakening and enlightenment and never falling back asleep, but it's really good. It's a stillness where there's no thoughts. So that's like when I see the sin, the error in my thinking, or just like to be so much more gentler with myself and not run a story about I shouldn't be thinking that way. It's just being able to stop it more quickly.
Mm.
So
Yes, and it says it's faithlessness. That was what stuck out in me in this reading, that it's not having faith, which I never thought of it that way. I was brought up in a Catholic environment, and even though my family was not all that followed the doctrine, it was still a form of Christianity that chastises sin, as many other Christian religions do as well, as making it something that's, bad, evil. And it is just you're thinking out of not being at peace. I mean, I really got it concentrated on this, and I'm sorry that I didn't read the first section of this, but I will be reading it. In that it's been difficult because, well, as George Carlin said, I don't mean to be funny, but he is. He says sin spelled backward is nice, and I think what I know, he's got this whole thing on religion that's just, he's a social commentary comedian. I mean, because he's speaking truth, and it sounds very funny. But anyway, that if you tell somebody not to do something, then you see what I mean. That's the way you get that concept of sin being nice. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then the guilt builds in, right? Because how could this be nice if I'm sinning, right? So, but I like the definition that is faithlessness.
Mm-hmm.
and not being at peace. Really, that's what it is. Not being at peace, being disturbed. And it's a concept, and that story we spin in our head from it.
Yeah.
That it creates more of this anxiety or angst because we feel like we're doing something wrong. That translates right into even some of the things that we do with love and life and sex. All of that. It convolutes it to the point where now you're not sure about what you're doing. Yeah, it's very disturbing concept. Yes.
I love that you brought laughter into it, Ernesto, because, as the Course says, it's that moment where we forgot to laugh. We just took this all so seriously, too seriously, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. George Carlin does this great piece on sin and burning in hell, but he loves you anyway. And the 10 Commandments, if you do one of those things, you're gonna burn in hell, smoke and fire, but he loves you anyway, right? I mean, it's hysterical.
That's funny.
Oh God.
Any other thoughts? It's a good conversation, sin versus error. All right, let's go to the unreality of sin. I'll go ahead and share my screen. The unreality of sin. The attraction of guilt is found in sin, not error. Sin will be repeated because of this attraction. Fear can become so acute that the sin is denied the acting out. But while the guilt remains attractive, the mind will suffer and not let go of the idea of sin. For guilt still calls to it, and the mind hears it and yearns for it, making itself a willing captive to its sick appeal. Sin is an idea of evil that cannot be corrected, and yet will be forever desirable. As an essential part of what the ego thinks you are, you will always want it. And only an avenger with a mind unlike your own could stamp it out through fear. The ego does not think it possible that love, not fear, is really called upon by sin, and always answers. For the ego brings sin to fear, demanding punishment. Yet punishment is but another form of guilt's protection. For what is deserving punishment must have been really done. Punishment is always the great preserver of sin, treating it with respect and honoring its enormity. What must be punished must be true, and what is true must be eternal and will be repeated endlessly. For what you think is real, you want and will not let it go. An error, on the other hand, it's not attractive. What you see clearly as a mistake, you want corrected. Sometimes a sin can be repeated over and over with obviously distressing results, but without the loss of its appeal. And suddenly, you change its status from sin to mistake. Now you will not repeat it. You will merely stop and let it go, unless the guilt remains. For then you will but change the form of sin, granting that it was an error, but keeping it uncorrectable. This is not really a change in your perception, for it is sin that calls for punishment, not error. The Holy Spirit cannot punish sin. Mistakes he recognizes and would correct them as God entrusted him to do. But sin, he knows not, nor can he recognize mistakes that cannot be corrected. For a mistake that cannot be corrected is meaningless to him. Mistakes are for correction, and they call for nothing else. What calls for punishment must call for nothing. Every mistake must be a call for love. What then is sin? What could it be but a mistake you would keep hidden, a call for help that you would keep unheard and thus unanswered? In time, the Holy Spirit clearly sees the Son of God can make mistakes. On this, you share his vision. Yet you do not share his recognition of the difference between time and eternity. And when correction is completed, time is eternity. The Holy Spirit can teach you how to look on time differently and see beyond it, but not while you believe in sin. In error, yes, for this can be corrected by the mind. But sin is the belief that your perception is unchangeable and that the mind must accept as true what it is told through it. If it does not obey, the mind is judged insane. The only power that could change perception is thus kept impotent, held to the body by the fear of changed perception, which its teacher, who is one with it, would bring. When you are tempted to believe that sin is real, remember this. If sin is real, both God and you are not. If creation is extension, the Creator must have extended himself, and it is impossible that what is part of him is totally unlike the rest. If sin is real, God must be at war with himself. He must be split and torn between good and evil, partly sane and partially insane, for he must have created what wills to destroy him and has the power to do so. Is it not easier to believe that you have been mistaken than to believe in this? While you believe that your reality or your brother's is bounded by a body, you will believe in sin. While you believe that bodies can unite, you will find guilt attractive and believe that sin is precious. For the belief that bodies limit mind leads to a perception of the world in which the proof of separation seems to be everywhere, and God and his creation seem to be split apart and overthrown. For sin would prove what God created holy could not prevail against it, nor remain itself before the power of sin. Sin is perceived as mightier than God, before which God himself must bow and offer his creation to its conqueror. Is this humility or madness? If sin is real, it must forever be beyond the hope of healing, for there would be a power beyond God's, capable of making another will that could attack his will and overcome it, and give his son a will apart from his, and stronger. And each part of God's fragmented creation would have a different will opposed to his, and in eternal opposition to him and to each other. Your holy relationship has, as its purpose now, the goal of proving this is impossible. Heaven has smiled upon it, and the belief in sin has been uprooted in its smile of love. You see it still, because you do not realize that its foundation has gone. Its source has been removed, and so it can be cherished but a little while before it vanishes. Only the habit of looking for it still remains. And yet you look with heaven's smile upon your lips and heaven's blessing on your sight, and you will not see sin long. For in the new perception, the mind corrects it when it seems to be seen, and it becomes invisible. Errors are quickly recognized and quickly given to correction, to be healed, not hidden. You will be healed of sin and all its ravages the instant that you give it no power over your brother. And you will help him overcome mistakes by joyously releasing him from the belief in sin. In the holy instant, you will see the smile of heaven shining on both you and your brother, and you will shine upon him in glad acknowledgement of the grace that has been given you. For sin will not prevail against a union heaven has smiled upon. Your perception was healed in the holy instant heaven gave you. Forget what you have seen and raise your eyes in faith to what you now can see. The barriers to heaven will disappear before your holy sight. For you, who were sightless, have been given vision, and you can see. Look not for what has been removed, but for the glory that has been restored for you to see. Look upon your Redeemer, and behold what he would show you in your brother, and let not sin arise again to blind your eyes. For sin would keep you separate from him, but your Redeemer would have you look upon your brother as yourself. Your relationship is now a temple of healing, a place where all the weary ones can come and rest. Here is the rest that waits for all after the journey, and it is brought nearer to all by your relationship. That reminded me of what you were saying, Pam, that as soon as you recognize that it was a mistake, you forgot all about it. It was just gone.
Yeah. And there's another part to that little process is when I notice I'm having a thought that's not making me happy, or I'm wanting to be right or whatever, I kind of visualize myself, although it's in black and white and there's no real faces, sitting in the cinema with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, watching myself on the stage, who's not me, not myself. No, watching Pam, who's not who I am, have this life, and then it dissolves. There's something, a knowing right then and there. I get some little help, or that was never left me, it was always there, but I can get still. And there's, even though there's a bit of a location in a cinema, I can get to the place where there's no body, no thought, maybe still a little location, not completely awakened from the dream, but dissolving those errors. In paragraph 4, I love this sentence. It was on page 404 at the very end. He says, every mistake must be a call for love. What then is sin? What could it be but a mistake you would keep hidden, a call for help that you would keep unheard and thus unanswered? So as part of my process, it's like, look at those thoughts. When they come up, don't keep them hidden. Don't let them be unanswered. I think that's kind of talking like, then it becomes sin, because then we feel guilty about it, and it never goes away. But when we bring it to the light, all those dark thoughts, then the healing can happen.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. Anybody else want to share any experiences of situations like that, or have any questions or thoughts about it?
Those last few sentences brought me also to ask, and I'm glad that Pam gave the explanation for it. That was a good explanation, because I kind of I like what it was saying, but I was not completely getting it.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else?
I like the fact that they mentioned the Avengers.
You like those movies too, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Great. That's great. Well, the next section has several parts. It's the obstacles to peace. So this should be fun. The obstacles to peace. As peace extends from deep inside yourself to embrace all the sonship and give it rest, it will encounter many obstacles. Some of them you will try to impose. Others will seem to arise from elsewhere, from your brothers, and from various aspects of the world outside. Yet peace will gently cover them, extending past completely unencumbered. The extension of the Holy Spirit's purpose from your relationship to others to bring them gently in is the way in which he will bring means and goal in line. The peace he lay deep within you and your brother will quietly extend to every aspect of your life, surrounding you and your brother with glowing happiness and the calm awareness of complete protection. And you will carry its message of love and safety and freedom to everyone who draws nigh unto your temple, where healing waits for him. You will not wait to give him this, for you will call to him, and he will answer you, recognizing in your call the call for God. And you will draw him in and give him rest, as it was given you. All this you will do, yet the peace that already lies deeply within must first expand and flow across the obstacles you placed before it. This will you do, for nothing undertaken with the Holy Spirit remains unfinished. You can indeed be sure of nothing you see outside you, but of this you can be sure. The Holy Spirit asks that you offer him a resting place where you will rest in him. He answered you and entered your relationship. Would you not now return his graciousness and enter into a relationship with him? For it is he who offered your relationship the gift of holiness, without which it would have been forever impossible to appreciate your brother. The gratitude you owe to him, he asks but that you receive for him. And when you look with gentle graciousness upon your brother, you are beholding him. For you are looking where he is and not apart from him. You cannot see the Holy Spirit, but you can see your brothers truly, and the light in them will show you all that you need to see. When the peace in you has been extended to encompass everyone, the Holy Spirit's function here will be accomplished. What need is there for seeing then, when God has taken the last step himself? The Holy Spirit will gather all the thanks and gratitude that you have offered him and lay them gently before his Creator in the name of his most holy Son. And the Father will accept them in his name. What need is there of seeing in the presence of his gratitude? Hello, Tim. Welcome in. Good to have you here. Pam, that reminded me again of something that you said. When you said you were watching the situation on a screen as if you were in a theater with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, right?
Yeah,
So, and that's exactly what you were describing, that you are watching it with the Holy Spirit, right? And then in that light, it dissolved.
Exactly.
yeah. The
Yeah.
words,
That's
the
all
word that
it
come to me are it's a constant accompaniment. I didn't make that up. It just came to me, but it when you're in it and solidly in it, it's there, and there's always a sense of, I mean, you could make a mistake possibly, but you would probably be aware of the mistake as you were making it. There's an inner sense of this is the correct way to be, and so like judging and things like that. Um, we we God doesn't judge, Spirit doesn't judge, so we can make value judgments about, somebody. I was just listening to somebody talking on the radio and was involved with a plot to kill almost President Obama. And I was like, wow. But I have to leave that drama there because that's not really real. If it had gone through, yeah, I could say Obama would have been probably killed. Didn't, of course, happen, but we can just spend our lives just wasting away. What if, oh, I gotta join this organization because that would have, you know, no. You just have to stay clear all the time. Stay as present as you can in touch with that, what you know is the real McCoy. I'll just use that old phrase.
Tim, I had this
They're
thought.
all except no substitutes.
Oh, sorry.
Little joke thing.
Tim's breaking up for me, so I'm not sure if y'all can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. He was breaking up for me too. Go ahead, Pam.
Well, when Tim mentioned when we're in that place, we could probably make a mistake. And the thought I had was, yeah, our egos are there. That split mind is there. You never know what's going to think next. So that next thought might kind of be a mistake. But if we're sitting in the cinema with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, we can just see it as a call for love. And really there's nothing but love. So nothing really even happened. Like I didn't really even have that thought. I didn't really make that mistake because it's really not possible in God. And I think you made that point, Tim. But thanks.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll, with a certain person I'm related physically to in this life, and not my wife, but you know, um, they'll want the floor. For instance, I'm just using something that came up a few days ago, and I was like responding to what they were saying fairly, like, yeah, that's good, and and they just wanted the floor. And so they just got kind of lost their patience, and that's why I don't like talking with you and blah blah. And I just had to go. I didn't say anything. I just said, okay, well, time to be quiet. There's somebody out here that thinks it's important for me to be quiet for this. I wasn't coming from Holy Spirit in those responses. So, Holy Spirit probably would have not said anything, but I was agreeing. Yes, back and forth, and then, can I finish? So, how many of you have had somebody like that?
Yes. Yep. All those experiences.
Yeah.
Ah. All right. Any other conversations about the first section of this, or should we continue? All right, let's keep going. All right. The first obstacle, the desire to get rid of it. The first obstacle that peace must flow across is your desire to get rid of it, for it cannot extend unless you keep it. You are the center from which it radiates outward to call the others in. You are its home, its tranquil dwelling place from which it gently reaches out, but never leaving you. If you would make it homeless, how can it abide within the Son of God? If it would spread across the whole creation, it must begin with you, and from you reach to everyone who calls, and bring him rest by joining you. Why would you want peace homeless? What do you think that it must dispossess to dwell with you? What seems to be the cost you are so unwilling to pay? The little barrier of sand still stands between you and your brother. Would you reinforce it now? You're not asked to let it go for yourself alone. Christ asks it of you for himself. He would bring peace to everyone. And how can he do this except through you? Would you let a little bank of sand, a wall of dust, a tiny seeming barrier stand between your brothers and salvation? And yet, this little remnant of attack you cherish still against your brother is the first obstacle the peace in you encounters in its going forth. This little wall of hatred would still oppose the will of God and keep it limited. The Holy Spirit's purpose rests in peace within you. Yet you are still unwilling to let it join you wholly. You still oppose the will of God, just by a little. And that little is a limit you would place upon the whole. God's will is one, not many. It has no opposition, for there is none beside it. What you would still contain behind your little barrier and keep separate from your brother seems mightier than the universe, for it would hold back the universe and its creator. This little wall would hide the purpose of heaven and keep it from heaven. Would you thrust salvation away from the giver of salvation? For such have you become. Peace could no more depart from you than from God. Fear not this little obstacle. It cannot contain the will of God. Peace will flow across it and join you without hindrance. Salvation cannot be withheld from you. It is your purpose. You cannot choose apart from this. You have no purpose apart from your brother, nor apart from the one you asked, the Holy Spirit, to share with you. The little wall will fall away so quietly beneath the wings of peace, for peace will send its messengers from you to all the world, and barriers will fall away before their coming as easily as those that you interpose will be surmounted. To overcome the world is no more difficult than to surmount your little wall. For in the miracle of your holy relationship, without this barrier, is every miracle contained. There is no order of difficulty in miracles, for they are all the same. Each is a gentle winning over from the appeal of guilt to the appeal of love. How can this fail to be accomplished wherever it is undertaken? Guilt can raise no real barriers against it, and all that seems to stand between you and your brother must fall away because of the appeal you answered. From you who answered, he who answered you would call. His home is in your holy relationship. Do not attempt to stand between him and his holy purpose, for it is yours. But let him quietly extend the miracle of your relationship to everyone contained in it as it was given. There is a hush in heaven, a happy expectancy, a little pause of gladness in acknowledgement of the journey's end. For heaven knows you well as you know heaven. No illusions stand between you and your brother now. Look not upon the little wall of shadows. The sun has risen over it. How can a shadow keep you from the sun? No more can you be kept by shadows from the light in which illusions end. Every miracle is but the end of an illusion. Such was the journey, such its ending. And in the goal of truth, which you accepted, must all illusions end. The little insane wish to get rid of him whom you invited in and push him out must produce conflict. As you look upon the world, this little wish, uprooted and floating aimlessly, can land and settle briefly upon anything, for it has no purpose now. Before the Holy Spirit entered to abide with you, it seemed to have a mighty purpose, the fixed and unchangeable dedication to sin and its results. Now it is aimless, wandering pointlessly, causing no more than tiny interruptions in love's appeal. This feather of a wish, this tiny illusion, this microscopic remnant of the belief in sin is all that remains of what once seemed to be the world. It is no longer an unrelenting barrier to peace. Its pointless wandering makes its results appear to be more erratic and unpredictable than before. Yet, what could be more unstable than a tightly organized delusional system? Its seeming stability is its pervasive weakness, which extends to everything. The variability the little remnant induces merely indicates its limited results. How mighty can a little feather be before the great wings of truth? Can it oppose an eagle's flight or hinder the advance of summer? Can it interfere with the effects of summer's sun upon a garden covered by the snow? See but how easily this little wisp is lifted up and carried away, never to return, and part with it in gladness, not regret. For it is nothing in itself, and stood for nothing when you had greater faith in its protection. Would you not rather greet the summer sun than fix your gaze upon a disappearing snowflake and shiver in remembrance of the winter's cold? You know, part of this reminded me of something I recently listened to about your aura. This woman I was listening to was talking about how everyone has an aura, right? It's the energy that is surrounding the body, right? And we know we're not a body. And she was talking about this aura, and she was talking about how this aura extends outward from you. You know, as we all know that when you enter a room, the energy you bring into the room enters before you, right? So people automatically can tell, oh, you know, he or she's having a bad day, or, oh my gosh, look at all of the joy and peace that has just entered the room with this, this person, right? It's the energy, right, that comes first. And so this kind of reminded me a little bit about what it's talking about, that peace is within you, right? And in that it's your purpose to bring that with you, right? Wherever you enter. And when you don't have that strong aura of peace and love coming with you, it's just because you forgot about your grandeur. You forgot about your eternal greatness, right? You forgot who you are. And instead you aligned with the little thought of the ego that, oh, I'm this little insignificant, fragile, worried, anxious thing, right? Which of course, you're not, right? And it's all part of that aura. And this woman was talking about the importance of working on your aura, right? To make it this powerful protection of light, I guess you would call it, because it doesn't allow those obstacles and those sinful thoughts to enter, because when you feel the grandeur of God within you, people could say whatever they want to say about you and it's not going to bother you or affect you, right? Because you simply know it's not true. So you don't even engage. But you also can bring that peace with you and affect like your brother, right? You can bring that love with you and make that positive change everywhere you go without even a thought about what they're saying or what they're doing or how they're acting. None of that can even has to affect you, because you're so strong in that knowing of who and what you are, right? And that kind of reminded me a little bit about that as I was reading this. It's all about the Holy Spirit's purpose rests in peace within you, right? And knowing that when you take on that purpose of being peace, then you're no longer interested in engaging in conflicting banter, right? You have that peace that passeth, that understanding, that peace that goes with you. And that's how you make true effect and true change, right? Is just being that peace.
We have Pam and I are a member of a group that's primarily over here in the Tallahassee area. And I would say our leader of that, who's taught us a lot. He often talks about his family, and he had one of his sisters was very, very argumentative, and he's over the years he's really got through to us that you all don't need to respond to that. I mean, silence is a perfectly good response to somebody going on and on and on and on and on. And so I've tried it a few times. It tends to take away the kindling and the wood from their fire. It's one-sided. After a while they go, okay. And that's what this fellow would say is then his sister would just say, okay, well, where are we going to go eat or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I was thinking of it coming from the other angle where I'm the one coming. I've noticed an improvement in myself. Like sometimes I'll read the course and I'll get all excited and I'll want to share it with my husband. And then I'll go on and it'll look like at some point he wants to escape. I not that he's saying anything, but he's not saying anything. And so then I would get triggered and I'm like, I want to talk about this, but he doesn't have anything to say. And I think just the other day, I was okay with it.
Yeah.
Instead of like, where are you going? I'm not done.
Well, I know Lee, and he's a doer, and he's probably thinking, oh my God, I've got 16 things on my list I want to get done today.
That's right. But it stopped. It's okay. He doesn't have to agree with the course or believe in the course or be sure about it or want to talk about it. It's okay. Oh my God, what a relief when I got to that point. I
Yeah.
hope I stay
Mhm.
there because it was a recurring pattern for me. I don't know, within just, I don't know how many months or whatever year. I don't get to sit him down very often. So boy, if I get him, then I'm gone. There I go. But if we're in the car, he can't get away. But at home, it becomes real obvious. I'm like, you drive, and then I know he can't fall asleep on me or whatever. But at least I
But
can
you know,
laugh at myself about it now and realize like I was wanting something out there to be different to make myself be happy in here. And that's got nothing to do with my happiness at all. Zero. I'm making myself unhappy. I'm like, let the light come to my ego and just be honest and admit it. Okay, yeah, Pam, you've been doing this. And I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then, then Holy Spirit just steps in or whatever was always there, just kind of like takes it off. I don't know. I can relax and stop worrying about it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And you really don't, it goes back to what we read like a few weeks ago is you really need do nothing, right? Because that energy in you, that peace in you will do it for you. As long as you can hone that energy of peace and be a channel for that and a vessel for that, that's all you really need to do is find your own peace, right? And remove your own sense of guilt or attraction to sin or all of that stuff. That's all you need to do because that goes with you. That energy enters. And if you can reestablish that in your aura, that just centeredness of love and peace and bring that with you, that's what's going to affect any type of real change or real resolution. And that's what you share out there with your brothers. It's not that you have to change their mind, change the way they think, not with your spouse, not with your political, friends that have different views. It's not about changing them or trying to convince them that there's another way. It's about finding your own peace inside of yourself and just being that when you show up into the room.
Good. Yeah, well said. Wow.
In paragraph 8, there's a line that really describes well what I've been struggling with for the last month or so. It's yet what could be more unstable than a highly organized dysfunctional system.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's me having to deal with all this. I mean, not having to, but me dealing with my thoughts of the government and what's going on. And it's this highly organized dysfunctional system.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I identify with you, Carl, and that's one of the things that when I just came into the class, I was away at a store and listened to this broadcast on NPR about an infiltrator into the KKK who actually disrupted, Obama would have been probably murdered. And there were corrupt police in with the KKK. And oh my God, I was like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So that's what I just came from and tuned in. I was trying to leave that and let that go. But that's what's going on right now in our campaign from a certain individual and his people. So same thing. Anyway, I don't mean to throw water on the fire, but yeah, it's a real thing. And you have to think, well, could I stand idly by? And Terry, you were saying, just bring peace to it. And well, I don't know. I mean, I think if you're led to say things. I mean, the more of us that speak out, as long as we don't do something rash, don't have to be silent. I mean, Gandhi wasn't, but he had a plan. Salt.
Well, again, I think the main concern is just make sure that however you are interacting with the world, make sure you are coming from a place of love and
Yeah.
not fear, that you're coming from a place of peace within yourself. Because as soon as you are triggered, as soon as you feel that impulse of that's not right, you've aligned with fear. So now fear is talking, right? So now you have a choice. You can stop and realign with love and allow that love to come through you and speak through you. But whenever you're feeling anything but joy, you've already aligned with fear. So that's the test, right? The test is, how are you feeling energetically? Are you feeling like you're resonating with joy? Can you speak from that place of resonance and that alignment with the Holy Spirit? Or are you speaking from that place of fear and lack and scarcity and judgment and belief in sin?
Yep.
Right? Because there's only two choices, love or fear, always.
Yeah.
And perfect love casts out fear.
And if you calm down, realizing, because we do realize when we are pushing, if you're able to step back and not do that anymore, things will come out of you that will help the situation much better.
Yes.
That's because the person who gave me this book doesn't believe in it at all. Okay. Or not, I shouldn't say not believe in it. I would say that as I have, because I have a lot of dialogue with her. We sit down and have some really good conversations. And what I'm seeing is that she's very much on this book. But what I'm finding is that she is misunderstanding what I'm saying. The other day she said to me, you keep telling me about this bullshit of forgiveness, but I said, no, that's not, and because there's somebody that she has a lot of hate for still.
Right.
And all of a sudden I realized, oh, I went too far, so I step back and I just get quiet, still think peace, think, well, help me out here, because I definitely have lost it. And all of a sudden I found myself saying, oh, no, it's not that you need to forgive this person, but rather yourself for having this vengeance thing still going on in your brain. I mean, and that sounded what makes sense to her. All of a sudden she got quiet and, oh, it's me that I have to forgive? Because really that's what the Course says.
Right.
That when you're able to forgive yourself, then you're at peace with whatever's going down.
And usually it's because you've aligned with fear instead of the grandeur of God. Because let's face it, if we know ourselves as God's creation in that light of the grandeur of God, what would we ever be afraid of? Nothing ever would bother us, because we would know the truth and we would know our greatness in the light of the truth. There'd be no fear, there'd be no lack, there'd be no scarcity. And everything that we created would come from that place of abundance, from that mindset of abundance, from that energetic frequency of abundance.
Yep.
For me, it's like, it's who do I want to identify with? Another part of my formula is, what does this have to do with the peace and love and joy in me while I'm sitting here in the cinema with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, watching this ego unreality that's like already happened and it's gone and it never really happened. And what does it have to do with me? And the answer is always nothing. And then that stillness.
Yeah.
Where there was no thoughts because it can't, there can be no answer to that question. What does it have to do with me? And the answer is nothing, or no words to describe it.
Yeah.
It becomes nothing. And it's from forgiving myself
Yeah.
and not even identifying with that self that, went off the rails. This just will and does, and oh well.
Yeah. And another way of looking at that is, let's imagine for a minute that we are all one, that the other is us, that all the others is us. So who do we really have a problem with? We have a problem with us as the other,
Yeah, exactly.
right? The other experiencing itself, us experiencing itself as the other is having a problem with us, right? So when you really get down to the nitty-gritty of what's happening within this world of illusions, right? It's all just us. It's just me. As you and you and you and you and you and you. And it's just you as me and everybody else, right? We are all part of this oneness, the at one-ment.
Yeah, wow.
What helps me remember that, it's something that Tim's wife, Denise, will say, there's only one of us in the room.
She likes to
Yes.
tell me that.
There's only one of us in the
When I
room.
look around, I
Yes,
go,
I love
wait a
it.
minute, there you are.
There's only one of us on this Zoom.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love that, right? How great is that?
Yeah.
There is no other. All right, everyone. Amazing conversation as usual. So glad to have such a full house today. Always great to see you guys. And I hope you'll all be back next week. Any other burning shares before we say goodbye? No? Well, thank you for coming. Great conversation.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
See you
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
me.